Qatar has a pretty well recorded relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood. Why is Saudi Arabia so worried? What is the United States' trip? Qatar is pumping cash into the United States. Qatar has got a prime real estate in Middle East. The United States is not blind to Qatar's flaws. Jai Guru to all you Heartlanders. Welcome to Heartland Ari. This is going to be an English presentation and I am going to attempt to answer 4 questions related to Qatar. 4 questions. Why? Because there's not much going on in the internet. A lot of what we would talk about remains scrubbed clean. There is also this issue with AI tools like ChatGPT, etc. The standard observation is that they whitewash most of their replies and leave you with nothing much in terms of tangible material whenever we are trying to ask critical questions about Qatar. Hence this small video and an attempt to answer 4 basic questions. Those amongst you that are curious, you could take this up as a reference and keep digging. And those amongst you that are looking to just understand why Qatar is perhaps one of the most unreliable states today with Turkey or with England, you can watch this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share and leave a comment. First timers, please don't forget to subscribe. Let's begin with the clip. Now this was put up by a friend of mine on FB, and this friend, he had gone a step ahead and he had asked Grok, the Twitter chatbot Grok, to dig some about the video and what went behind. Unfortunately, not only did Grok choose to ignore his command, but it meticulously scrubbed the entire conversation, including his questions. So what's this video about? Let us just watch the video first.
The Qataris, since the mid-90s, have been sponsoring radicals. They have become a base for the leadership for the Muslim Brotherhood.
So this was sometimes in 2017 or 2018 when the then Saudi Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adel Al Jubeir, he made a long and caustic observation about how Qatar supports, aids, abets extremist Islamic movements and groups along the entire Middle East, and how that sort of undermines the regional stability. He was specific about Qatar's involvement with the Hamas, with the Muslim Brotherhood and other shadowy Islamist outfits. That brings us to the first question. What are the basic details of Qatar's friendship with these groups, especially Muslim Brotherhood and alqaeda? The answer to that is Qatar has a pretty well recorded relationship, a well charted, well documented relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood. It was since 1960s that it has provided a safe haven for Brotherhood figures, fleeing from places like Egypt, fleeing from places like Syria. One big name is Yusufalqaradawi. He is an Egyptian cleric and a Brotherhood ideologue who's lived in Doha since 1961. He's been provided a platform on Al Jazeera, which is the Qatari state television channel, where he has pushed Muslim Brotherhood agenda and ideas to millions of people all around the world. He has issued fatwas, he is called for killing of Jews and so on. Qaradawi has gradually become one of the most influential, if not the most influential Muslim Brotherhood figures. He is one of the most important and influential Muslim Brotherhood figure over the years, and his influence these days spread well within Europe and South Asia. Now, this kind of a disproportional influence has been the gift of Qatar. When Muslim Brotherhood members were fleeing Egypt, a number of them tried to take refuge in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and other states, and Qaradawi was the only one that went to Qatar. Later, this guy was to play a major role in establishing the Qatari educational system. He was the one to lead the Qatari Secondary School Institute of Religions. He later served as a dean at Qatar University. He was also involved with the Qatar Foundation. This foundation serves as a vehicle for promoting Qatar's policy objective and influence, and promotes Qaradawi's brand of Islamism through the foundation-run Al-Qaradawi Center for Islamic Moderation and Renewal and the Qaradawi Scholarship for Islamic Studies. Other than providing permanent platform in their state-run Al Jazeera TV channel, Qatar also provides him with multiple other media forums to spread his fatwa, to spread his messages, about suicide bombing and about anti-Semitism. This man remains closely linked with 2 large banks, the QIB, which is the Qatar Islamic Bank, and the QIIB, which is the Qatar International Islamic Bank. This is an extremely rich man, thanks to his extremely close link with the Al Thani family. This family is the ruler of Qatar. Qatar also got very active during Arab Spring. That was the time when it was backing Muslim Brotherhood linked groups in Egypt, in Tunisia and Syria with money, with media coverage, with diplomatic clout. For example, during Mohammed Morsi's presidency in Egypt, Qatar reportedly funneled around $7.5 billion to his Brotherhood affiliated government. And after Morsi's ouster in 2013, Qatar gave refuge to a large number of exiled Brotherhood leaders. Now, when it comes to Al-Qaeda, the case is a little murky and the case is a little unclear. There are no tangible links as such. Qatar has been accused of letting funds flow to Al-Qaeda affiliates, especially through lax oversight of private donors. And in 2014, David Cohen, United States Treasury Under Secretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, he called out Qatar for allowing terrorist financiers to operate freely. These were two particular names. One was Abdul Rahman Al Nayoumi and one was Khalifa Al Subay. Both were tied to Al-Qaeda. This Nayoumi chap, he allegedly funneled millions to Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria. And this Subay guy supported the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed chap, that 9/11 mastermind, back in the 90s when he lived in Qatar. The United States and the United Nations have sanctioned these two guys. But the critics of these activities of Qatar, they say that Qatar's enforcement has been absolutely casual, absolutely careless and absolutely lax about these two people. And once again, let me remind you that there is no hard proof that Qatari government funds Al-Qaeda. However, I mean, this is important. However, when someone like Al Jubeir speak up in an international forum and directly accuses Qatar, I'm sure there must be something behind it. And I'm sure people are expected to take notice. That brings us to the next question. The next question is, why is Saudi Arabia so worried? After all, the Al Saud family was extremely active in promoting Wahhabism across the world during a time, 1960s, 1970s, etc., so on and so forth. Wahhabism in this part of the subcontinent was a partial Saudi gift, especially during the times of Afghanistan chaos that happened because of Soviet intervention. So, why have they suddenly gotten so uneasy about Qatar? Their accusations aren't baseless, which is true, but they're not exactly what one would say historically clean when it comes to using radical Islamism as a strategy to extend their influence into neighboring regions. To answer that, we have to first understand that Saudi Arabia is acting out of self-interest. Whatever Saudi Arabia was saying, whatever Al Jubeir was saying, it is trying to wrestle out of that old identity these days. In a manner of speaking, in their eagerness to make peace with technology and modernity, they are stepping out from the darkness into the light. However, their leadership remains top down. Saudi Arabia is a monarchic state. Naturally, Saudi Arabia, or for that reason United Arab Emirates too, would view Muslim Brotherhood as a direct threat because it mixes political Islam with grassroots movements. And grassroots movements could challenge a leadership like a Saudi leadership or a United Arab Emirates leadership in future. That's one worry. So you have to understand that Saudi Arabia's beef is not about ideology. They see Qatar's support for Brotherhood as a play to undermine their dominance in the Gulf region. And this kind of a support might push for a regime change sometimes in future. The Brotherhood's pan-Islamic vision, the Brotherhood has a pan-Islamic vision that clashes with the Saudi monarchy's claim as the leader of the Muslim world. And Qatar's backing of the Muslim Brotherhood and other groups such like Al-Qaeda and all amplifies that threat. And I would insist viewers to check how there were aided movement in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain similar to the Arab Spring movement during that point in time, and these movements were crushed even before they could take shape. And there are very little to no media coverage about the details. So, coming back to the video, this distrust of Qatar hit a record low during 2017 with the Qatar diplomatic crisis. That was the time when Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, all of them cut ties with Qatar and hinged on this cutting ties on their issues with Qatar and its relationship with Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, etc. These states, they issued a list of 13 demands, including the cutting of ties with Brotherhood, shutting Al Jazeera network, handing over terrorist figures like Qaradawi, etc., etc. Which brings us to the third and second most crucial question of this presentation. What is the United States' trip? Why is it so soft on Qatar? What is this love for Qatar? What is their plan? Do they have any plan? Now, this is going to be a fairly nuanced answer. Even I have to search to find out proper answers. So you've got to be patient here. Because this United States ka love-hate thing which is going on with Qatar, to my mind, is all about balancing some big picture geostrategic and political priorities. So here is the deal. There are 3 or 4 points that I have managed to summarize in my mind. Number one is that Qatar has got a prime real estate in Middle East. It hosts the Al Udeid Air Base. This airbase is like the Pentagon's VIP lounge for its operations in the region. You know, Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran. It's a massive hub for United States Central Command. And the US has just locked in a 10 years extension in 2024. That's a huge deal because it provides the United States a very stable launch pad to keep an eye on Iran, to project its power in the region, to project its influence in the region, to stay in the game in this neighborhood, so on and so forth. Point number 2, from United States' perspective, is pragmatism. See, Qatar is a very slick mediator. I mean, you can imagine Qatar as the guy who can talk to everyone in the party, if there is a party. So he can go and talk to the politician, it can go and talk to the mafia, it can go and talk to the socialite, it can go and talk to everyone. It has got ties with Hamas, it's got ties with Taliban, it's got ties with Muslim Brotherhood. And that's also one of the reasons why United States wants to keep it close. Because Qatar can pick up the phone and get stuff done. Negotiating hostage release, ceasefire talks, especially where in the areas where no one else can, where no one else has the leverage. Qatar has that. So Qatar as a back channel is too useful for the United States to sort of walk away, to sort of burn it and things like that. Point number 3 is money. Qatar is pumping cash into the United States. You know, $45 billion in investment, like the Golden Pass LNG project in Texas. This is a venture with ExxonMobil. Plus, it is buying truckloads, tons of American gears, from fighter jets, defense system, this, that, and so that's like a lot of jobs, and that's like a lot of money flowing back home, which keeps the politicians happy. As far as the Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood stuff is concerned, yes, it is messy, and I am sure the United States knows this. Is it thrilled? Probably not. But it's like they are willing to look the other way as long as Qatar keeps the bigger strategic, plates sort of spinning. Calling it out too hard could tank the whole relationship, and the United States is not ready to lose that base. Point number 4, plain politics. It's about optics, it's about leverage. Qatar is a main non-NATO ally, which is a fancy way of saying that it is a part of the club. If it is a part of the club, United States can crack down on terror financing, you can crack down on anything because it's under the control of United States. US can do that anytime it wants, without starting a full-on fight, without starting a full-on state-related problem with Qatar, whenever it wants. It knows that. It knows it has the control. In the Gulf, where they consider Iran to be the biggest, baddest of all the states that are there, keeping a state like Qatar on the side helps to counterbalance Tehran's influence. So what could be a bottom line? The bottom line to my mind is the United States is not blind to Qatar flaws, but it is playing along. Security, influence and cash, these kind of things, they outweigh the headaches as of now. So it is less about protecting Qatar. It is less about its love for Qatar. And it is more about using it as a chess piece. Or at least that is what the United States establishment wants to think. And here comes the fourth and the final question of this video. You see, Iran has a very little socio-political influence on the outside world. When it concerns Middle East, it has got a massive influence, yes. When it concerns the outside world, United States, Europe, Asia, Iran has a very little socio-political influence compared to the massive influence that Qatar has. Is the US blind to it? Why is the US blind to it? Let me try to answer that. It's like this. Iran's influence might not stretch out far culturally, but it has got enough muscle to destabilize the Middle Eastern region like choking oil routes and proxy armies and this, which has been going on, and that is enough to freak out the United States allies like Saudi Arabia, like Israel, etc., etc. That's enough to freak out the United States also, which likes to maintain that balance and likes to maintain that control over all the trade routes of the world. So that's why Iran becomes a tangible, a kinetic problem right here, right now. Iran has got missiles, Iran has got Houthis, Iran has got Hezbollah, Iran has got Hamas, Iran has probably got a nuclear program that nobody knows about. So these are the things about Iran that is keeping everybody on the edge and not the limit of its socio-political influence on the outside world. Qatar, on the other hand, is playing a sneaky game. Its cash and its networks, the alqaeda, the Al Jazeera, the mosque funding, ties to different Islamist groups, they are pushing a slow burn version of Islamism into Europe and the US. But it is not storming the gates right away. That's something which would be coming in the decades, which will be coming in the next 1-2 decades, but in the shape of lobbying, in the shape of soft power, in the shape of halka demographic shifts, in the shape of political parties, political influence. The United States probably does not see that as an immediate emergency scenario because it is not blowing stuff, it is not sinking ships, it is not blocking routes. It is a long-term headache, it is not a short-term crisis. And that is why this free pass. A part of it is just cold, hard pragmatism. Qatar is too useful. Its usefulness outweighs its problems of the future. Okay, its bases, it has got radiation cloud, it has got energy deals to sign, it has got things to give, too many things to give for the United States. For the United States to kick up a fuss over something that is more abstract, that is more future. Iran is right here, right now. Iran is a here and now problem. Qatar is a kind of a leaky bucket that you can ignore for a while. Plus, you've got to look into the other side also. The United States has this habit of betting that it can manage and reform messy alliances. Just look at Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia of the past with respect to its Wahhabi baggage, and look at what Mohammed bin Salman is trying to achieve now. There's a sea change that has gone on. So there is no saying that tomorrow Qatar would not be going through that same kind of a cycle. And I'm sure the United States wants to bet on that. Yes, there is an angle of demographic shift that Europe is witnessing. And since the European Union is too weak and too woke to address that, a few eyes are on the USA to respond to that. Incidentally, this does not bug the United States elites as much as we would like to think or imagine. It's time for you all also, viewers, you all also to get cold and calculative and understand what I'm going to say. If you have the levers of power, you don't care about religion unless you are using it as a tool. For that, Indians need to study the Jewish power structure. Coming back to the video, if Islamism creeps in via Qatar's influence and shifts the cultural landscape, Washington might see it as a manageable trade-off as long as the dollars and the security alignment and everything still line up. There is also another point to consider. The United States has already got a scenario with Christianity fading away from public life at a very rapid and a very fast pace. If and when Islam comes, if and when. If it can be used as a lever to control large swaths of population, that would in fact be a welcome arrangement for the power centers in United States and European Union. Imagine the kind of influence that the United States would wield if it can integrate Pax Americana with Pan-Islamism. That's something which we need to think. That's something which not many of us are thinking. Finally, there's one last angle, what I would call a civilizational blind spot. United States has always been obsessed with near-term threats. The threat of communism, the threat of Soviet Union overrunning the European continent, the threat of Russia, the threat of terrorism, threat of China, everything is now and then. So states like Qatar, groups like Muslim Brotherhood or their infinite game, they easily fly under the radar. It is that typical American denial, typical American mentality of we will deal with the mess when it becomes a mess. That enables the United States mind to stay insulated while it keeps focusing on China, while it keeps focusing on Russia. So these are the reasons why Qatar is getting a free pass. It is a useful devil as of now. And if you are wondering if the West is cool with a post-Judeo-Christian future, I would say it is probably that they are less cool and more we will cross that bridge when we come to the bridge kind of an attitude. And that is what, unfortunately, that is what realpolitik has been over the past decades. It is always kicking the can down the road, leaving it for someone else to handle in future. If you can kick the can, you keep kicking it. As long as it can be kicked, as long as it's movable, keep moving it for someone else in the future to handle it. And with that, we come to the end of this video. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. I will be back next week. Stay sharp, stay real. Jai Guru.